I'm pretty good actually. I'm okay at the moment. Yeah. Well, I think it's important to think about it because I think typically what happens with people is that our initial reaction is to say, yeah, we're fine. But actually, sometimes we're not okay. So it's okay to be not okay. So have a think about it first. And I thought, well, actually, I am okay. Probably energetic. I would say emotional, and I would say generous. So I was always energetic, right? I was always enthusiastic, all these things. And then for a long time, what I did is that I would do television. And on television, it would be volumed up, right? So it's yourself, but it's a little bit volumed up. Problem is that when the cameras turn off, you still think you have to be that person. Always heightened all the time. And actually, it's pretty good to just relax sometimes. Not everything is a rating. You're not going in and getting a TripAdvisor review or everything, or an Uber rating every single time you're going into a room. And I thought for so long I was always getting a rating. You know, I can't laugh all the time, and you can't tell jokes all the time, and you can't always be up and enthusiastic all the time. As much as I wanted to be. You can't be like that. You can't be a comedian all the time, right? You can't be the jester. And for so long I wanted to be the jester all the time, so there's times when you can just chill and relax, and that's okay. So when I was younger, all I wanted to do was be famous. I thought fame would be the coolest thing in the world, and everyone would know who I was, and it would validate and be the great thing, and everyone would love you. And the problem with fame is that everyone wants to be famous. Not everyone, but a lot of people want to be famous. And when you become famous, actually you realise it's just nonsense. And all it is that actually a lot of the time you just give away your privacy and then you're just famous at the end of the day. And fame doesn't really bring in a lot of things. It just people know who you are, and that people want to take your photo a lot more, which is just quite nice. And you know, I always say that Socrates said there are two levels of happiness. The lower level, right, which is about fame, wealth, power, all the things that you want to achieve. But actually the high level of happiness is loyalty, friendship, trust, love, you know, these things. And actually when you attain the lower level of happiness, you don't realise where you're not completely content. It's the high level that you want to gain. And for ages I thought that wealth and power and fame and these things was important, but actually they're not that important. Right? So I think I was always an anxious kid. You know, I was one of these kids, I was always naked as well, always being naked running around. But I was always running around the place, everywhere, stealing things, breaking windows. I used to run away from home the whole time. So there was all these things going on. So I probably now, you would say that I was an anxious kid, but I didn't know that at the time. And, you know, I was like typically like in a child, I was insecure, I wanted to be popular, I wanted to be best friends with everybody, all these different things. And so it was great. And then I went to university, and university was fun. And then I started doing a show called Made in Chelsea. And that was exciting and fun and different, but also it comes with the effects of it. So you get the social media comments, or you get the backlash from doing a reality show, whatever it is. You know the not sort of security side of things, that you're doing a show that could end tomorrow. All these different things came up, and I was 23 years old, and I was watching a TV show, and the TV show, the guy in it said, "Oh, I've got a bad feeling here," and suddenly I went, "I've got a bad feeling here," and my heart started to race, I started to sweat, I started to get blurry vision, and I thought I was dying. So I took myself to hospital pretty quick, by myself, and I stood there and I was shaking and all these different things. I was taken into the ward, and I said, I'm dying, I'm having a heart attack. He said, you're not, having a panic attack. I said, what's a panic attack? And he said, oh, it's just when your adrenaline's through the roof and you're panicking and all these different things. Go and have a Coca-Cola and you'll be fine. I thought, what? So I left, had a Coca-Cola, but it was 6 hours of thinking I was going to die. It didn't stop. And the next day I woke up, and that sense of fear was still there. And that was the beginning of my journey of anxiety, of knowing what anxiety was. Anxiety I always think is one of the things that you learn, right? So you learn, it's a learned process. And before I didn't understand it or know what it was. And then after my panic attack, I had something called GAD, General Anxiety Disorder. And what happened was that, so then for the next 6 months, I would panic in any situation, because what happens, I was scared of having another panic attack. And I didn't tell anyone at all, no one, because I was scared what people would think of me. I was scared how I was going to, my work was going to be affected. I was meant to be this really happy-go-lucky guy on TV, but then I was inside, I was freaking out, and that didn't quite correlate. So I didn't tell anyone, and I remember I was standing in a shower, and I was feeling so panicky and all these different things. I suddenly said out loud, what is wrong with me? And I broke down. It was the first time I said it out loud, and because I made it real. I then spoke to my mum. Mum took me to a doctor took me to a therapist. I started speaking to a therapist, but I still didn't want to be labelled as this person who had anxiety. No, I didn't have anxiety, I didn't have these things. Someone else has all these issues, it's not me. And the hardest thing to do with any mental health is accept it. And because accepting it means that you think that you are different, you're wrong, you're broken, all that kind of stuff, and that's what I thought at the time. And so I had this battle with anxiety from that age, 23 years old, and it never really stopped until, it's never stopped, but I got to a point at 27 years old when it was so much that I suppressed it through to lots of things. You know, I would probably drink too much, or I would have different relationships, or I would, so and that's always pushing away what you're actually feeling. I was, you know, looking for instant relief, you know, all the time. And at 27 years old, I was in a restaurant. I just had another argument with my girlfriend. And I remember it so well. I was sitting there with my friend, and we were talking, and it was suddenly like it's like an Instagram filter came over my eyes. And I was like, what? And it was like I was in this sort of dream state. And so this sort of sense of filter, this sort of Instagram filter, this sort of sense of not being quite there was just stayed there for 2 weeks. And so finally I decided to go and speak to a therapist again. And I thought, okay, maybe I should talk to a therapist because this is not right. Therapist didn't know what it was, so he sent me to a psychotherapist. And the psychotherapist said, Jamie, you have something called depersonalization. I said, what? It's a great Scrabble word. I didn't know what that was. I was like, what is that? And he said, well, you get it when you have stress, you get it when you have severe depression, PTSD, severe anxiety, or you get it when you have psychosis. And for me, who is in a state of depersonalization, it's very hard for you to, you basically are, I've pushed myself to a point where my body's put me in autopilot. You're basically put into a dream state almost, where you're sort of floating above your body. People describe it as seeing themselves above themselves. And I sort of had that. And it was because I had pushed myself to a level where I was so anxious that my body went, do you know what, we're going to have to just do something here. But I thought it was psychosis. For the next 6 months, I thought I was going mad. And I couldn't control it. And I had such bad anxiety that if I swallowed, I would think about swallowing. If I blinked, I would think about blinking. Still trying to do TV shows, still shooting, pretending everything was okay. And after 6 months, I went on holiday and rested for the first time in ages. And I just rested for 10 days, and the Instagram filter lifted from my eyes, and it sort of passed away. And from that moment, I said, okay, I've got to change this. And I started seeing a therapist. And I'm lucky to see a therapist, right? A lot of people, you know, can't always see therapists, but I saw a therapist, and that was the moment, 27 years old, where I started speaking about it, being honest about it, and it was my journey to accepting anxiety. I couldn't switch off, yeah. And the thing is, I could have switched off, right, if I really wanted to. And a lot of people can switch off, but I chose not to, because once again, I thought life was going to pass me by. I thought if I stop now, everything's going to go there, I'm never going to get it back. So I kept chasing, and that's what led me to feeling the way I was feeling, and it was pretty horrible. But then the thing was that I had depersonalization and anxiety and stuff, but I still didn't quite look after my body. Yeah, it was my journey to the beginning of talking about it and things like being open and honest. But then I had burnout when I was about 30 years old, 29, 30 years old. And that's because, again, I was just working too much and I was pushing too much. And I was kept going and going and going and going and going. And you just have to let yourself relax at times. And if you don't let yourself relax, you'll get to a point of burnout or depersonalization or being too anxious, all those different things. Yeah. You have to look after yourself. Yeah, I'm lucky now where I can sense I'm getting to places that are becoming too much, or I'm stressed too much, or I'm anxious, or I haven't slept enough. And I now see the signs, and so then I will stop and relax. But I only know that from experience, because I know what happens, what I get to at a certain place. So when it's like driving down the road and seeing road signs, as you said, you see these road signs, and you go, okay, fine, I see a road sign now, that means I've got to relax, and you have to listen to the road signs. I think it's like a tricky scenario if we're going to teach younger kids, because, okay, I think I was an anxious child, right? And if someone, when I had lumps in my throat, so I was this or that, if someone said to me, you're an anxious child, I would have gone, well, I'm an anxious child. And then being an anxious child would have made you anxious about being called an anxious child. I think there needs to be more education around it, 100%. Because if you take me, for example, I didn't know anything. So when I was experiencing the panic attacks and the anxiety, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't understand what was going on. So I then just thought that I was different, I was alien, I thought that I was broken. That's what I thought. So I think 100% there needs to be education around it, and understanding behind it. Because the problem is it's scarring from the inside, so you can't see it happening. And that's the hardest thing, because when you scar from the inside, if it doesn't show on the surface, then it used to be where you don't have a problem. So there needs to be education around it, without a doubt. For me, things that I have tinnitus. So I have tinnitus, which is basically, long story short, it's where your hair follicles in your ear, they've been broken. And when your body hears a noise, or your brain hears a noise, the hair follicles are hit back with the noise, and that sends a signal to your brain that you're hearing something. With me, the hair follicles are constantly broken, so I constantly hear a ringing noise. If I think now, yeah, I can hear it now. But the problem is that it never gets incurable, right? And how you help with that kind of sort of scenario with tinnitus, I always think, is it's treat it like an aircon in the room. So if you have aircon in your room on holiday, or you hear a fan in your room, or whatever it is, if you think about the fan or the aircon, then you can hear it, but you kind of try and switch it off. Now that's really hard to do. And for me, when my anxiety is high, or I'm stressed, or whatever it is very high, my tinnitus is very high. So I use that as an alarm for myself. So I go, okay, tinnitus is high, therefore something is wrong with me. I'm either tired, I'm stressed, I'm anxious, whatever it is. So let's rest, relax, and chill. And then when the tinnitus comes down, I understand that I'm much better. So I use that as an alarm. I think people should use those types of scenarios as more of an alarm to themselves. My tinnitus started, I was anxious, and I woke up one morning after a party, and I was like, I could hear this noise, and I was like, where's that noise coming from? And I was looking around the house to try and find this noise, and then I went, oh God, it's not in my head, is it? And it was. And when tinnitus starts, for anyone, I just want to cuddle you, because it's a pretty horrendous thing when it first starts, because again, accepting tinnitus is the hardest thing to do. But once you accept it, it's much easier. Same with all mental health. Once you accept it, it's much easier to deal with. I just try to fight it for years. Oh God, this isn't me. I don't want it to be me. Fight, 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 fight. But you just gotta go, do you know what? This is my makeup. It's okay. Well, we're selfish beings, right? So we want to know that other people are feeling the way that we're feeling. And I can tell anyone right now, if you talk to your friends, your family members, anyone at all, that you're going to echo back. Someone will say to you, I feel the same way as you. I was with a group of buddies, right, the other day. And we all hadn't seen each other for a while, and we were sitting in a room, and we were all talking, and I felt, when I was at the height of my anxiety, I felt incredibly socially anxious, and that kind of is still with me a little bit sometimes. Not as much as it was, but it was bad. And I'm a really outgoing kind of guy, like I'm pretty outgoing. And we were talking about it, and I said to them, I said, I felt really socially anxious at that point. And they went, you feel socially anxious? And it was like this thing where it goes, I feel socially anxious, oh my God, I feel like that. And so what happens with your friends is that if you say things to them, honestly, you'll get the same reply back, and then you almost, your relationship becomes much closer. And guys don't normally say things. This is the problem, because we don't. We want to talk about football and having a beer and building a shelf. I don't know, that's what, isn't that what guys do, supposedly? I mean, that's what we're meant to do typically. And we're not meant to talk about our feelings, and we're not meant to talk about, if we're feeling insecure or upset. That's not what we're meant to do. So we don't open up about it. Yeah. And the problem is that if we don't open up about it, it eats away from the inside out. Yeah. And it becomes worse and worse and worse. And it's a horrible thing. It's like vomiting up. You don't want to do it, but you have to do it. Once you say that one thing, like me in the shower when I had the anxiety, I said, what's wrong with me? At last I said it out loud, and because I said it out loud, I then managed to speak to people about it. The worst thing for my mental health, I would say, alcohol is pretty bad, if I'm honest. My own self, my own mind is bad for it. So when I speak negatively towards myself, that's what affects it. And that can be done when you don't get the job that you want, or you're feeling a little overweight, or whatever it is, or things like that. So that's when you can affect yourself. So yeah, alcohol and speaking negatively towards myself. Then I know if I start speaking negatively towards myself, it's not good. Also, lack of sleep. Lack of sleep is crucial. Honestly, that affects it in so many different ways. And people, as we said before, people don't understand the importance of sleep and rest. You don't need to sleep like 10 hours every night, but it's just, you need to rest. And people don't understand why they're feeling a certain way, and typically it's because they haven't rested that much. What actually creates happiness is really strong connections, loved ones, and having like a good relationship and stuff like that. That's generally what creates happiness, not money and all this different stuff. And I think exactly that, the reason why we talk negatively towards ourselves a lot of the time is because we're not achieving what we want to achieve, we're not doing what we want to do. And I think that you have to try and twist that in your head, and try a lot of the time to not always look up and see what other people have. Because if you always keep looking up at what other people have, then you're never going to really be happy, because someone's always going to have more than you. This is the problem with Instagram and social media, that you're always comparing yourself to others. So don't compare yourselves to others. Realize what you have and be happy with what you have. And I think it's a really hard thing to do, so hard. But if you do that, you can start speaking more positively towards yourself. And instead of saying to yourself, which I always do. Okay, I'm not going to get that job. Oh, that's never going to work. Oh, I'm not going to date that girl. Or that. Oh, my relationship is going to end at some point. Switch it around, even if you don't believe it, and say, yeah, my relationship is going to work, or I am going to get that job. Just do that. Start changing your way of thinking, and that helps a lot, I think. The best thing for mental health is, okay, it's the usual one, exercise. Wow, I didn't realize how much exercise helps, but exercise really helps. And that you don't have to be doing like a CrossFit championship or whatever it is. It's, go and do a spin class or a quick run or a jog or go on a walk, something like that. That really helps. And talking about it. Speaking up, talking to someone, anyone, your dog, your best friend, your parents, a stranger, whoever it is. Talking really, really helps. And so I think when people start talking about things, it makes them feel much better. So I would explore, I think exercise is fundamentally one of the best things you can do. I really do. And some people don't want to exercise, and it doesn't mean you have to go to a gym or you have to buy a bike machine or something like that. Honestly, walking helps, like it really does. But I didn't exercise. I exercised at school, like I played loads of sports, all that everything. Then I didn't exercise pretty much from the age of 20 until 28 or 27. And then after my depersonalization, I went and had a spin class. I went to one spin class. And I came out of the spin class and I was sweating and I was like, oh, I feel pretty good. And I remember thinking I hadn't felt that good for a while. I almost forgot what it felt like to feel good. And I don't, you don't climb Everest, right, straight away, or you don't have to do a marathon straight away, but if you haven't done any exercise whatsoever, and you wake up the next day and you do 5 minutes of jogging, that's 5 minutes more than you did yesterday, and slowly build it up. I honestly 100% believe that exercise helps. People tell me to meditate. I don't meditate. I should meditate, and apparently it's the most incredible thing in the entire world. There's a book called 10% Happier, which is about a guy who didn't meditate, but then meditated, and it really helped him. And people say actually, when you say you don't have time to meditate, that's the best time to meditate. And for some people it's amazing. But I don't do that, but I exercise and I do cold therapy. I do cold showers in the morning. I can talk to friends and family for ages. It was too intimate, right, for me. And I think this is what happens with a lot of people, is that they don't want to talk to I could talk to my mum, that was pretty much it. But you normally have one person in your family that you can talk to, but some people don't. And actually it's too intimate to talk to friends or loved ones. So talking to a stranger, sometimes it's easier to do it. And I found talking to a stranger, a therapist, much easier than explaining it to my family. Because the problem was with my mum, when I spoke to my mum about it, she could reassure me. And that was about it. It's going to be okay. Don't worry, it's all right, you'll be fine. But that doesn't give you the answers. And what happened for me, which really helped, is going to a trained professional, someone to actually speak to and actually talk to, who have studied it, who know about it, who understand it, know what anxiety is, know what depression is, know what OCD is, insomnia is, all these different things. And so for me, speaking to someone who actually had the tools to help me get over it, that was a huge help. And for me, it was all about CBT and cognitive therapy behavior. And it was that, for me, really helped me. And I think more people should, if they have the ability to do it, should talk to a therapist or someone who is a professional. I think that is so important. What I think the problem was with family members is that I thought I was becoming a burden. And I think that's what happens a lot of the time, is that I was constantly saying stuff and talking about stuff and all these different things the whole time. And I was like, well, I still don't feel okay, so I want reassurance. And actually, with a trained professional, it was different because you didn't feel like a burden to them. You didn't feel that you were wasting their time because, you're there with them. That's what they're there to do. And so that really helped for me, where with my family members, at some point I was like, God, I keep saying this to them all the time and I'm not feeling better, and they're just reassuring me and I'm not feeling better. So I kind of need to get something more. But it's hard to commit to something like therapy and understand it because you are talking to a stranger and people don't trust strangers. And you don't want to open up to people that you don't know. And so that's very hard. I was lucky because I was quite an open person. A lot of people aren't. They don't want to open up to strangers. And it's just trying to get over that insecurity of trusting someone else. So social media is a great tool, but also it can be a dangerous tool, right? So I always think, typically we're meant to have a village mentality. We're meant to know like 200 people or whatever it is. And out of those 200 people, we have a USP, unique selling point. So something that makes us us. So the best at rugby, the best at being on TV, the most blonde hair, the best at music, the best at dancing, the best at painting, the best at sewing. It could be anything, but you have something that makes you you. The problem with social media is that you have access to 1 million people. And so you wake up in the morning and you see someone who is much better than you at driving cars, or funnier than you, or better looking, or whatever it is. And so you're constantly comparing yourself to others all the time. And people should stop doing that. Stop comparing yourself to others, because it doesn't matter what other people are doing, just focus on yourself. And I think the second thing is that we are so worried about being judged. So we put up a photo or a video or whatever it is, and we feel that we're going to be judged by our friends. I have a friend of mine, a person called Steph, who is a fitness person, and she's huge on social media now. But she nearly didn't do it because when she started posting her fitness videos on social media back in the day, everyone just made fun of her. Why are you doing that? That's silly. And she wouldn't be doing what she's doing now if she had backed out. And that happens so many times, whether you're singing or whatever. And just you do you. Go for it. If you love dogs, post about dogs. If you love butterflies, post about butterflies. If you want to post about fitness or making smoothies or doing whatever, do it. Who's anyone else to judge? So just go for it and have fun. But social media can be tricky because we compare ourselves the whole time to other people. You have to remember, take it with a pinch of salt. When everyone is posting about being with their friends all the time, or being in the most beautiful places, or eating the best food, or looking the prettiest and stuff like that, you know, it's always the best version of themselves. So don't always compare yourself to other people, because you're posting the best version of yourself and so are other people. We portray this sort of vision of happiness all the time. We're not happy all the time. We're humans, we have emotions, we're up, down, left, right, backwards, forwards, and that's okay to be that way. It's very easy to say, and this is what they said, it's very easy to say, let's get over the stigma of mental health. That is easy, right, to say, because you're not admitting it. What's harder is to say, I have anxiety, I have depression, I have OCD, I have insomnia. And so I think I encourage more people to stand up and say, I had these issues, rather than people standing up and saying, let's get over the stigma, because that's it's like saying, let's cure cancer. That's a huge thing. But it's so different to someone saying, well, I have cancer, right? It's the same with mental health. Accepting you have mental health and talking about the fact that you have mental health is so much more important than saying, let's get over the stigma. So I encourage more people to open up about it, because also when you open up about it, firstly, you're going to save lives. Secondly, you're going to realise that other people are feeling the same way that you're feeling. And thirdly, you're going to feel better because you have that communication with somebody else. Yeah, so when I was younger and I had anxiety and I was talking about it, my friends would say to me, yeah, you'll get over it, you'll be fine, don't worry about it. That was a really bad thing to say to someone. Second thing is that stop talking about it. If you talk about it, you make it worse. If you don't talk about it, you talk about it, you'll bring it into existence. It's like, no, I'm not, trust me, I'm panicking, I'm not bringing this here right now. So I think with anyone who, if you don't, and a lot of people out there don't understand, they don't experience, and that's an amazing thing and they're very lucky, but a huge amount of people do experience. I think it's 1 in 4, maybe it's higher than that. So if you do speak to someone that does have mental health issues or experiencing mental health issues, be sympathetic, empathetic, have self-awareness that you don't know what they're experiencing, so listen and talk to them and understand what they're saying. You know, you can't get professional help, but you can reassure them and you can help them. But don't dismiss them. That's the worst thing you can do, I think. So I started a podcast with my friend called Josh Roberts, who wrote a book called The Anxious Man. He's a great guy. And if you ever want to read something that really is relatable, if you've had the panic attack and the anxiety afterwards, he wrote about that and it was like a light bulb in my head. We started a podcast called Voicemail, which is about people sending in voicemails, but also it's about a voice of a male, like guys speaking up and being honest about stuff. And we did it because we want people to be more open, and I think as guys we're not open about stuff, because guys, we don't know how to portray emotion. So when we have an emotion inside us, it normally comes out with anger if we don't understand it. That's why guys get angry a lot, is because they don't understand what they're feeling, and also they try and reject what they're feeling because there's this whole masculinity around it. You're meant to be alpha, and you're meant to be strong, and you're meant to be going down the pub, and you're meant to be drinking beer and not worrying about your feelings and stuff like that. But we all have feelings, and we all have emotions, and we all deal with different things. And the problem is that we, as men, are meant to typically, we live in this sort of archaic age where we're meant to be the breadwinners and help everyone and look after this and that. And if we're not doing that, that means we're failing. 3 things I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for healthy friends and family, 100%. I'm grateful, I'm honestly grateful that I can, like, this sounds silly, but like my legs. It's odd.
It does sound
it does sound odd, but I'm grateful that I can run and walk and do all these different things. I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for my health.
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm grateful for.